is out with surgery. I'm Dina Eldridge, but I am from Community Services Consortium.
Thank you for joining us. I'm going to start your 10 minutes right now.
All right. Okay, and the blue handout is just a one-page kind of summary of what we're asking for. So many of you may be familiar, but in case you're not, the short version is Community Services Consortium, or CSC, is a nonprofit community action agency, and we serve Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties, and we have been doing that for the past 30 years, helping people to become self-sufficient and relieve the causes and conditions of poverty. I am from a department called Emergency Services. We do housing assistance and utility assistance. So the grant that we are asking for from the city of Corvallis, we call the Emergency Housing Program, Corvallis Emergency Housing Program. What we are asking for is a total of $15,016 to run the Corvallis program. And what that will get is a breakdown of $8,550 will be used as match money to obtain an additional $8,550 that comes from the Department of Human Services for a federal program that they call housing stabilization. And that will garner us a total of $17,100 that we can use to help Corvallis families either prevent eviction or prevent homelessness or leave a homeless situation. The remaining $6,466, that's a typo on there, it should be 66, will pay for 0.1 FTE of our housing case manager for the program. So what the program does is it works with Corvallis families who have minor children living in the household and either helps them prevent an eviction if they've gotten behind on their rent due to some sort of emergency or crisis in their life, they've lost their job, they've had a medical problem, missed work, that sort of thing, had a layoff. Or if they've already found themselves homeless, but they have found a place they can afford to move into but need help with like a deposit or first month's rent, move-in costs, the program can also help with that. So we like to think that it's a rather effective program for the reasons I have on here, which include helping families avoid homelessness or getting back into permanent housing. The requests that we get from families who are needing this type of assistance are addressed really quickly, and most of them have not only an answer as to whether they're eligible, but have all the paperwork, if they are eligible, processed and done within a matter of 1 to 3 days typically. So it doesn't take weeks and lots of paperwork to get this program done. The assistance we feel is sustainable because one of the eligibility criteria is that the families show that they'll be able to afford the rent and sustain the housing after we are able to either alleviate their crisis or move them into the rental property. A lot of what we do is prevent homelessness, which we find is cheaper than trying to take someone from a homeless situation and put them back into housing. And it's definitely less disruptive, especially on children in the schools and young families. It's you know, a lot less upheaval and a lot easier on the whole family. But when we do help people leave homelessness, we work with the community outreach shelter and CARDVA also to get people out of the shelters and out of domestic violence situations, which helps free up space for more people to go into the shelter and progress through. And we can also help people that have been at the shelter for a little while that are back on their feet, keep from falling back into homelessness because they can't come up with that move-in cost that's so hard to save for. The money also provides all of the people who request assistance with access to our experienced housing case manager, and she assists them with their plan for self-sufficiency and also with giving them resources for all the barriers they may be facing, and the resources can be to all sorts of community organizations and CSC other programs as well. What we do as a follow-up is we are required by the DHS program to follow up with each family that receives the funds 90 days after they've received it to see if they are still in housing. And what we found is in the Corvallis program, our average is 85% remain in housing after 90 days. So we consider that to be a pretty successful average. Obtaining Corvallis funds for this just increases the amount of overall emergency housing that we're able to obtain, and it provides a pot of money that's dedicated especially to Corvallis families. Otherwise, the match money that we normally get for Benton County and Lynn and Lincoln County is state funding. It's unfortunately on the chopping block, as many things are at the state level. And the less there is of that, the less obviously we are to leverage the Department of Human Services money. And if it's just Benton County money, we can't target it specifically to people living in Corvallis. It would be for all of Benton County. So that's the nice thing about having the local match. And I know they want you to talk about what would a 50% reduction do if we didn't get our full funding. Basically, that would mean that you would just be paying for 0.05 FTE of the housing case manager and half as much funding or to match the leverage money from the Department of Human Services. So for example, this year we had a 41% decrease in the amount of money that we'd had the previous year from Corvallis funding. But we were still able to serve 46 individuals, 15 households, for a total of what we call nights of shelter, which the definition of that is we get that by timesing the amount of people in the household times the number of nights or days, 24-hour times, that we're paying their rent. So even with the reduced funding, we had 1,649 nights of shelter provided. The year before, when we were back to closer to what we're asking for this year, we served 24 households, 78 individuals, and provided 2,340 nights of shelter. It's really hard, since, as you might imagine, every family needs a different amount of money to either catch up their rent or move into a place. It's hard for us to say exactly how many people we will help because we don't have a set figure. But those are basically our averages. So, are there any questions?
For the domestic violence basis for getting the funding, does that have to be one partner physically abusing the other partner? My question is, if a child is being sexually abused, does that count as domestic violence for the funding for the non-abusing parent to move the child out of the home?
Are you talking about a child who's going to live autonomously?
No, the non-offending parent would move out of the abuser's home.
Oh,
with the
yes,
child.
sure. Yes, we would consider that domestic.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Do you offer this assistance for like the rent and whatnot more than one time, or is it a one-time only thing? Or
Because our funding is so limited, we generally make this at one time, usually ever. But we have made exceptions in the past, but this sort of funding is pretty limited, so it's not like energy assistance where you can come and get it every year. We try and save it for when people are most desperate, and we'll take the best advantage of it and be in a position to really get on their feet and stay there.
So is that a policy, or is that just a general?
That's just our policy.
Okay.
There are limits for DHS sets limits, but they're quite a bit higher, and it's amounts of money we don't even get
Sure.
for a whole year. Yes.
Because we're in a college town and apartment, housing is pretty limited. We're at pretty high levels of vacancy. Do you work specifically with different apartment owners and buildings that coordinate with you, collaborate with you?
I know our case manager has a list of landlords that are good, that we work with often, that are good to work with. We have other rental programs. We have a HUD-funded program that's more of what we call transitional, where we help people for a whole year's time. So when we have relationships like that, we get to know, what landlords are really fair and cooperative with us, and which can cause problems for the tenants. So there are some we do try and steer people away from, but she's got a pretty good list of resources to offer to people and kind of help them find places.
Mm-hmm.
Who pays the other .9 FTE of your housing case?
That would be from other programs that we administer. We have, as I said, the HUD Transitional Housing Program. We have, right now, what we've had for the last year and a half is a program called Housing Prevention and Rehousing, or Homeless Prevention and Rapid Rehousing, I should say. It's an ARA-funded program. It's similar to this. It usually helps people on a little longer basis, whereas this is usually like a month. The HPRP, as we call it, might be 1 to 3 months, 90 days or so. The only problem with HPRP is it was stimulus money. It is going to end. We think it will be out of money here by June or July. And then, frankly, we are down to this program and this program only.